and welcome back to another episode of ACX University. I'm Hannah Wall, and I'm coming to you today not from Audible Studios, but from my home here in Manhattan, New York. This episode is being recorded in May of 2020, and working from home has become the new normal for many of us. For more experienced VOs, you're probably spending more time in the booth than ever. And for those of you who are new and just tuning in, you're probably wondering, how can I get set up to record a great sound quickly? In today's episode, we're going to be talking about exactly that, gear that you need to get your sound great. And for those of you who are more experienced, gear that can upgrade your sound to take you to the next level. Plus, for those of you who are a little more handy, my DIY VOs, we've got some ideas for things that you can use around the house to make your recording sound even better. Joining remotely today from Topanga, California is George Whittam, aka George the Tech. He's a friend to ACX University, and we're always glad to have him with us. George has spent more than 12 years serving the technical needs of voice actors and recording studios around the country. And in August 2017, George launched GeorgeTheTech.com to assist anyone who records voiceover with tech support, training, and studio design. And he's globally considered a top authority in voiceover recording technology. Welcome, George.
Hey, Hannah, thanks for having me on this again. It was fun doing it last time, and let's get you guys a bunch of information as quickly as we can so you can feel comfortable recording at home.
Let's start by just reminding viewers about some of the fundamentals of recording from home and what should be included in a good recording studio.
Well, the first thing that you really have to deal with in any home studio is noise, right? So you have to be really clever about where you place your setup to reject as much background noise as possible. For a lot of you, that might end up being a closet. And closets, while they're a little confining sometimes, tend to be one of the quieter spaces because they don't have windows, and many times they're on the inside of the house, so you're as far away from the outside as possible. So find somewhere quiet. That's definitely step one. Step two is once you find something that's quiet, then you need to make sure it sounds like a studio. And that may sound scary and expensive, but it isn't. You can use all kinds of practical things like blankets, pillows, all of the clothing currently hanging in your closet, which is awesome if you have room for clothing and you. All those things will damp the sound of your voice from bouncing around, resonating, echoing, reflecting, and all that, so that when you're recording your voice, it sounds clear, clean, and free of any kind of coloration.
And sound can really travel in any direction, including up, for those of you at home who might not be thinking about that as a place that your voice travels.
Yeah, and you want to think about, essentially think about the hard surfaces near the microphone. So whatever's the hardest surface or the hard surface closest to the mic is the first problem you need to deal with. That's typically in a small space going to be behind the mic and on the sides of the mic. But in some cases, it's going to be also above the mic. So if you're in a closet that has hard wooden shelves for clothing, that lowest shelf right above your head is definitely going to be a problem spot, and you'll want to make sure you cover that. You can layer blankets, pin them up. You can use acoustical foam, but you want to get rid of that hard reflective surface right over top of your head.
Absolutely. So let's also talk about the mic and preamp setup, because we always get questions from the audience. What kind of mic do I need to be working with to record for audiobooks specifically?
Yeah, well, can we do a little show and tell? Because I have a couple things nearby.
Absolutely. It's encouraged.
So I have a few different microphones here, and some of them are quite old and some of them are new. But one of my favorite go-to audiobook or even all voiceover recording microphones of all time, due to the quality and the sound quality and the affordability of the mic, is this one right here. This is like your standard studio condenser microphone. And what I like about this one is that it has high-pass filter switches. So that means you can turn on a switch on the base of the microphone and tell the microphone, please ignore low-frequency noise. See the little switch right there? See if that reads on camera. Yeah, it looks like it does. Low cut. So if you have a mic with a low cut switch, like this one happens to have it. This is an Audio-Technica 3035, which has been replaced by the 2035. You're going to be in a good place to start because these mics are sensitive, but they do reject that rumbly low-frequency noise that you don't want in the recording. So these are a great place to start. Any large diaphragm condenser microphone, somewhere in the $100 to $200 and maybe $300 range will cover you quite nicely.
What else have you got in the studio for us to look at in terms of microphones?
So going in a different direction in terms of microphone design, and similar to the one I'm using right here, is a shotgun microphone. So shotgun microphones are unique in that they're more directional. So they have to be worked a little more closely or more carefully so that you don't move too far off mic. But their advantage is that they tend to reject more background noise. So if you're in a less than ideal recording environment in a city, trying to stop as much background noise as possible, a shotgun mic can work really well. Here's an Audio-Technica shotgun mic called the 875R. That's the AT875R. These are very affordable, roughly $200, maybe even less, $180. That's one option. And then this one here is a Rode NTG4. A little bit more expensive, a little bit cleaner and quieter, but great for rejecting background noise and getting a nice focused sound. Some people say don't use USB mics. I don't really agree with that, but there are some that say you should avoid them. There are some really good quality sounding USB microphones available. So if you're going to go that route, just make sure you do your homework.
So for those of you at home who might just decide to bypass the USB mic and go with one of the models that George was just showing us, those do require phantom power and a preamp. But George, tell us a little bit about kind of what that interface should look like and where too much is too much.
I know. Yeah. So audio interfaces are, sort of an all-encompassing device now that provide the microphone preamp, provides what's called an analog to digital converter to take the audio into the computer, provides a headphone amp. It does a lot of different things that in a classic recording studio took a lot of gear. So an audio interface is one of those really important things in your voiceover recording studio. You have to have that product that's going to capture audio accurately but also be really reliable. And at the same time as all that, be easy to use. A single microphone input jack, phantom power, a gain knob, and a headphone level control. And that's essentially all you really need. Why would you upgrade from there when you could start at $100?
Yeah, are more buttons better?
Yeah. So what happens is some of these products, what you're really doing when you're upgrading is adding a ton of new features, and most of those features are not really applicable. And what comes with that are learning curve issues and just sort of overall reliability issues. The more tech that's going on, the more things that can go wrong. I really like to avoid interfaces that have a custom or some sort of proprietary software driver and a console where all these little sliders and faders and switches have to be set on a screen. I really don't like those. There so much more can go wrong. I love the devices that just have physical knobs right on the front, gain for a mic, level for the headphone, and not much else. The most efficiently designed and simple interface that also sounds awesome is actually this Rode AI1. This thing is beautiful. I mean, it is efficient and simple. It has a headphone jack, a microphone gain, and a headphone level. That is all it has on the front panel. This button turns on phantom power. This one can turn on headphone monitoring, and that's it. And I love devices like that. Simple, efficient, clean, and works on Mac and PC. That's the kind of products I recommend. Stuff that can't have much go wrong in the software side.
That's very versatile and very compatible with other things. And I think that's also another important point is, as you're choosing equipment, you're going to want something that can play nicely with all these other tools. As you're making upgrades, you're going to want compatibility between your various tools. And then in terms of your recording software setup, what's your advice for someone who's looking to affordably get going with software, or maybe looking to make a change?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious choice, I think, for most people that are getting started with a minimum budget is probably going to be trying Audacity. Audacity works very well. It's quite an efficient program. It's not super complicated. It has its share of quirks, and there's a lot of tutorials out there to learn how to use it. The only downside of Audacity would probably be that it just has no actual support because it's a freeware program and it's made by a community of developers. That's its really downside, is that support issue. If you're looking on the Mac side of things, my favorite by far would be something called Twisted Wave. Super easy to use, affordable, great support. And on the Windows side of things, Adobe Audition, while a little bit more expensive because of the subscription, is fantastic. But really, SoundForge, Some folks like Pro Tools because they like that environment. They're used to it. And another favorite that's kind of taken the wind out of the sails of a lot of others now, for sure, is Reaper. So if you're Windows or Mac, Reaper, and you want to do punch and roll recording affordably, Reaper is definitely a big one now. So learning curve-wise, definitely on the other end of the spectrum, a little bit more complicated. But all of these programs will record great professional quality audio. So don't worry about necessarily which program you use. Just make sure you know how to use it.
We love Reaper at ACX, and if you visit blog.acx.com and search for Reaper, you'll find a mastering chain that'll help you get started really quickly when it comes to post-production for your audio. So let's talk about what maybe some extras are. Maybe you've got the bare minimum recording set up and you're looking to make yourself more comfortable. What are some nice to haves for your studio that you might not think about right when you're getting started?
Nice to haves. Well, I think a proper way to mount the microphone is really, really helpful. And, a lot of us are going to probably get the usual music stand style stands or boom arms and things like that. And the problem with those tripod stands is they're a little topply sometimes. They can fall over. And in really small spaces, they're very cumbersome and very difficult to fit into a small space. So I love to use something more flexible and versatile, like a microphone boom arm that would be mounted to a wall or a desk. I can swing this into the shot. This has a different mic mounted to it. But this is an idea. You've probably seen one of these things on the radio or in podcast studios. But I love that about these because they're just so easy to adjust on the fly. Put it where you need it, and when you're done and you're done recording in your space, swing the mic up and out of the way.
Just collapse it against the wall.
Yeah, it doesn't take up any space. They're very, very stable and sturdy. So I love those types of products, and there's a whole lot of them available on Amazon and websites like that you can try and just read the reviews. You can buy these things for, I think, as little as $20 nowadays.
Excellent. So what else, peripherally might you want your studio, like wireless keyboards? What other things can make your job easier?
I'm glad you brought up the keyboard thing. So some of us can get away with maybe using a laptop in our closet studio if we're lucky. If you happen to have a laptop that is quite quiet, not making a lot of noise while you're recording, some of the lower powered computers that don't have super powerful graphics cards are a good choice here, such as the Surface Pro, which actually some of them are totally fanless, or on the Mac side, maybe the MacBook Air, while not fanless, quite quiet. So you might be able to just get away with the computer that you already have, and it might be quiet enough to record. If you're not that lucky and it's a little bit noisy, then it's very inexpensive to get a secondary keyboard, mouse, and even a display that you set up in your closet. For maybe less than $200, you could have a display, keyboard, and a mouse. It could be USB or Bluetooth. I prefer USB for just low maintenance, no dead batteries in the middle of sessions, less annoying. But you can have all that rigged up in your closet space so that if you really do want to do punch and roll recording, it will be convenient for you to do that. If you're not doing punch and roll, then you can just hit record, walk in, sit down, and when you're done, get up, walk out, hit stop, and start editing. So you can keep it minimal if you like.
So for those of you guys at home who maybe already have your setup and you're looking to kind of test how your sound is going, what are some tests that our viewers might be able to run to identify any sound leakage in their space?
Yeah, good question. I know sound comes in through obvious places like, badly made windows, old windows, places that are very clear and easy to see. But also sound comes in places that are not so obvious. And those not so obvious places are definitely going to be like through the walls themselves, the floor, the ceiling, and things like that. And the structure that you're in can transmit sound. It's kind of interesting. The whole outside of the building is like a giant microphone. The whole inside of your room is like a giant speaker. It's a transducer is what we call it. So where's the sound coming in? Well, you can kind of detect it by using a really simple technique. And that is take a drinking glass. If I had one in my hand, can you fly that in later? If I had one in my hand, put the drinking glass open end against the wall and put the flat side against your ear. And that will act sort of like a microphone, and you can listen to where the sound is coming in the most. You might be surprised sometimes where the loudest sound is actually coming in.
Interesting. Okay. So everyone head to the kitchen after this video and find those weak spots in your space, and maybe we can help you, put some extra blankets, some extra treatments to get that nice and quiet.
Yeah, and sometimes those noises, if they're just quiet enough or if they're just sort of a constant droning, can be very easily EQ'd or filtered out with some software. So don't freak out. Sometimes those sounds are fixable in post very easily, where other sounds may not be, like birds chirping, dogs barking, things that are random. Those are a lot harder to fix later.
For my folks at home who are thinking about, who are already maybe doing this close to full time and are thinking about upgrading their space, how, George, do we know when it's time to upgrade your microphone and your preamp setup to improve your sound that way?
Good question. I mean, honestly, it's time to upgrade it when you're making money. When you start actually making some profit from your business, yes, you're running a business, so you should know when you're making profit. When that starts happening, make a little fund for yourself. That's my new gear fund. And, once you hit a couple $100, $300, $500, start looking at some upgrades. So we talked about the microphone. We already mentioned that. In terms of audio interfaces, we didn't mention that, but a good product to accompany the microphone that we were showing earlier would be something like a very simple but good quality audio interface like the Steinberg UR12. This one is one of my favorites for the money that you can get. There's also the Scarlett Solo by Focusrite, very, very similar. And the Behringer URC202 HD, I believe, is another one. Same price range, very good quality audio. But when it's time to upgrade, there's a lot more we can do.
But make sure that your voice is paying for those upgrades before you commit. I like that philosophy. That's really, really good. Okay, so when it comes to monitoring our recorded audio, tell me a little bit about whether you favor headphones versus speakers.
Yeah. Speakers are nice because you don't have to have something on your head, obviously. And for some people, wearing headphones all day is not particularly comfortable or something they really want to do, especially when it gets warm. The danger of using speakers, though, sometimes, is if the recording environment isn't set up for monitoring on speakers well, you're not going to hear back through the speakers what really is there. You're going to hear a very different version of the real thing. It's going to sound more boomy or bass heavy. Sometimes it's more sibilant, depending on what you're using. So sometimes speakers, while are really convenient and comfortable, may not give you the most honest picture. So I basically say to people, use speakers as a casual listening method. Maybe if you're just listening back to your auditions or checking them. But when you're getting down to like detailed editing, definitely go to headphones for that. And for headphones, well, the sky's the limit on headphones, just kind of like microphones. I'd say the sweet spot on really good studio.
Yeah, do they have to be expensive?
No, I'd say the sweet spot is going to be around $100, but there are some exceptions at the much lower end of the price range. In fact, I found these a little while ago on Amazon. These are some Lyx or LYX Pro headphones. They're surprisingly good sounding headphones, well made and comfortable. I think they're under $50. So there are some good headphones in an affordable price range. And my favorites are the Beyerdynamic DT770s, which I'm wearing right now, 770 Pros, and the Audio-Technica ATH-M40X. Those are some of my most commonly used headphones that I really love.
For those of you who are starting to dive into audiobook narration for the first time, George, what are some of the things that they should maybe avoid when they're looking at setting up their new studio?
Yeah, don't overspend on microphones and gear. Don't get kind of sucked into the web discussions about what's the best microphone and things like that. You can really quickly overspend there. So don't go crazy there. Don't buy the most powerful computer or some gaming laptop or something that's a graphics powerhouse, because anything that's powerful comes along with it a lot of cooling, fans, noise. That's what that means. You don't want super high-end powerful machines. Lower end, slower, not slower, but just lower end computers that aren't designed for video, just for basic use, actually ends up being an advantage to you. So don't go there with really powerful machines. Also, another don't is I wouldn't use dynamic microphones. Dynamic microphones are definitely very popular for podcasters and broadcasters, and they work really well when you're broadcasting your voice, essentially, like I'm doing right now. I'm projecting because I'm broadcasting. I'm trying to reach 1 million people. When you're reading an audiobook, it's a more intimate thing, and you need a really sensitive microphone, and that's what condenser mics are going to provide for you.
Another great element to consider about recording is that time is money. The less time you spend in front of the microphone, the more time you can spend getting new gigs. So, George, what are some of the shortcuts that we might be able to build into our recording systems to make our processes a little bit more efficient?
Yeah, well, it starts with just the act of recording. So there's two kind of basic ways to go about it. There's the classic record, roll, and then edit later. And there's the punch and roll method. Now, some people find punch and roll to be a huge time saver and really a valuable thing to learn how to do. Other people find it to be a little cumbersome, annoying, takes them out of the role. They have to go from being an actor to an editor, and they don't like that. So a very, very simple fix for that is to simply add to that basic recording method a clicker. And so every time there's errors in your audio, you just mark it with a click. And the beauty of that is when you go to sit down and do that first edit pass to remove your flubs, it'll be very obvious where they are, and you'll be able to go in there real fast, find those clicks, and edit out the flubs first before you go through and do a complete quality control test on your audio. So that's a really practical thing. From a technical side of things, if you have mouth noise, and almost all humans do, it's kind of part of being a human, you may find yourself wanting to filter that out. So plugins that can do that really well include the Isotope RX package. I think the current version is RX7. They have a mouth declick feature that is very efficient at removing mouth noise. So if that's a big problem for you, that's something you might want to consider as well. But I would avoid using too much noise reduction features. RX also comes with noise reduction tools, and they can really degrade the audio quality when they're not set up correctly. So really be careful about using those and save any noise reduction for the final step, which is mastering. So a few little basics.
I love that. Okay. And when it comes to mastering, what are some ways that we can save ourselves some time in the mastering process?
One way you can save time mastering is to learn the proper methods on how to master using the software that you have. So some software packages are a little bit easier to master than others. I have techniques I've figured out and taught people how to master on Audacity, Twisted Wave, Adobe Audition, Reaper, Pro Tools, pretty much all the major packages. I've figured out methods for mastering. And you really want to learn a flow that makes it easy to repeatedly do and takes away the guesswork of achieving the specs that we're trying to achieve. So don't stumble around in the dark when it comes to mastering. Definitely learn it. But the thing is, it's kind of a science, not so much of an art. So once you do learn a technique, it's very easy to do it repeatedly and quickly. And you can get through mastering an audiobook quite efficiently if you learn some techniques. But it's not complicated once it's set up, and it doesn't take any really specialized software either. Just whatever recording software you happen to be using, in most cases, will work very well for mastering.
I love that. I actually want to talk a little bit about backing up our files, and because that's another element of, recording your sound and making sure that not just that things sound great, but that you can deliver the finished product. So what are some cool upgrades that you can get to make sure that you're backing up and just keeping your files really organized?
Yeah, I know I'm most familiar with Mac, and every Mac has a program built in called Time Machine. So if you're not already doing this, what are you doing? Back your computer up, people. Have something running that's backing up the machine, and Time Machine does that basically all the time, so you're always backed up. On Windows, there is certainly an equivalent software on there that will do a similar type of ongoing backup, but you can also go cloud backup. I happen to be a user of Dropbox, and so every single recording I do is being saved and stored up in the Dropbox cloud every time I save. So that's a real peace of mind. Like right now, everything I'm recording with you guys is being saved and going up into the Dropbox cloud. So if something went wrong, I have a cloud backup of everything I'm doing. So you don't have to use Dropbox. There's OneDrive from Microsoft. There's a lot of other programs, but make sure it's something that will just constantly keep a cloud backup of what you're doing. It really is some real peace of mind.
And backing up every session is so important. Even as you go, right?
Yeah, as you go, and keep versions. Keep a raw version, an edited version, a pickups version, a mastered version, and then I always keep the last file, the very final version I call final, in a folder called final, and that's where all the MP3s go. So have copies of everything, keep versions. Hard drive space is cheap, and make sure you're backed up.
So let's talk about one of my favorite topics, DIY. Shipping is taking longer than ever. For those of you who are just jumping into the game, there's so many of you, and a lot of things are sold out online. So George, what are some handy DIYs that we can do with things that are around the house for all my crafty VOs out there?
Yeah, well, you can certainly use a lot of practical things to enhance your recording space. So again, heavy blankets, draperies, anything that is collecting dust or can be repurposed and relocated to your space can work really well. You want things that are going to absorb sound, absorb echo. So old comforters, or even the one you currently are using if you have to, do a really, really good job at this. Also, in terms of ergonomics, we touched on this earlier, but don't find yourself looking down at a script when you can easily elevate whatever you're reading on with just simply books. Stack up a pile of books and get everything stacked up at the height where you need it to be comfortable. So when you're working, you're not going to get a crook in your neck, you're not looking down too far, and just kind of stack things up to get things at the height where they need to be. There's a couple really simple ones.
Another one of the tricks I've seen online is that folks are using a skirt hanger or a pants hanger to treat their recording space by folding up blankets. How many layers of blanket or material should be between you and the wall?
Yeah, so thin materials, anything that lets light through, is almost useless for sound. So if you're just hanging up a bed sheet or something, that's not going to do it. You want things that are more dense. And so if it stops light, that's a good start. So you want to have several. If it's like a drapery material, you might want to have a couple layers of that. If it's like a moving blanket, one, maybe two layers of moving blankets. One doesn't always quite do it, but two can really do the trick. And if it's a nice heavy down comforter, sometimes just one of those is all it really takes against the wall or around you to kill off the reflections and the resonance in the space.
I've seen a lot of moving blankets in a lot of your studios. So yeah, think about doubling up or putting on another layer to get that nice and quiet.
A lot of people have moving blankets in their storage, in their basement or in their garage. So throw them in the laundry, get them clean, and hang them up.
Definitely. Is there any, to me, it seems like I would grab cardboard boxes that I'm getting packages with and breaking those down and maybe putting those in between a layer of blankets. Is that something that we could use at home to dampen sound as well?
Cardboard boxes are kind of thin and they don't have a lot of density to them. I suppose if you layered enough of them up, it could make a little bit of an improvement to the soundproofing of the space, but not all that useful, I don't think. They might be more useful to take a nice size shipping box, and if you're sitting in a desktop area and you want to deaden the whole space around you, you could line the inside of the box with acoustical foam, old towels, and even a nice old pillow or a cushion in the back of the box to create a chamber around you. Just make sure it doesn't sound like a box.
All right, so we're not putting our cardboard up on the walls, but we can possibly turn this into a microphone box using some materials that we have around the house. That's a great idea. Would you still want to put that inside your recording space, or could you use that anywhere?
I typically recommend those kind of solutions when you don't have a closet or you don't want to be in the closet. If you have a quiet enough space already and you have a desktop area where you want to work, creating a chamber or an enclosure around that area with a large box can be pretty effective. Again, it has to be treated correctly with material, but it's a nice way to take a larger space and make it smaller by just enclosing the area around the microphone. But don't do it in the closet. You already have an enclosed space around you. No need to make it smaller. So just treat the whole closet as a whole and treat a larger room as a smaller space by creating a space around you. You can even just hang the moving blankets from the ceiling. You can get really creative and just create a tent around you.
Oh, interesting.
So whatever works for your space.
Okay, I like that tip. That's all the time that we have for today, and I hope you've learned a thing or two that'll help your recording space sound great. If you want to learn more, George, where can people find you?
Well, I'm on the web at georgethe.tech. So there's a lot of services on there, a lot of free advice as well, resources we call it. Or if you want more hands-on, one-on-one training and setup experience with your studio, or learning how to audiobook master, all that kind of stuff, it's on my VO Tech Services menu. So that's it, georgethe.tech. That's my place on the web.
Go check him out. And thank you so much, George, for being here as ever. We always enjoy having you around. And thank you at home for watching. Now that you sound great, time to go work on your performance. So check out some of the other videos on our YouTube channel and start getting your sound perfect. We'll see you next time.